What's that say? We dined, well, it says we dined in town and then went to the Heights and lodged.
So these are your people. And this is a journal that a young man who was to play a monumental role in American history wrote when he was 16.
Do we know who it was? He suggested we head to the Library of Congress to see if there are any documents that can help me unravel the mystery of who Yost Haidt really was. This is such a cool place.
It is.
Oh my God, goodness gracious. This is
Amazing,
unbelievable.
isn't it?
I've never been in here. I've only seen it in movies.
This is the main reading room of the Library of Congress. The Library of Congress is the largest library in the world.
Is it really?
Yeah. There are more documents about early American history here than anywhere else. It's a remarkable national treasure.
Well, I never thought that I would be here to find out something about my ancestors, that's for sure.
Well, here we are. We have someone here who can introduce these documents to us.
What do we have here?
Is the journal of a young man, in fact, very young, 16 at the time. He's traveling along with his surveying party in the Shenandoah Valley.
And what year is this?
1748.
17. Wow. That's old.
The entry we're going to ask you to attempt to read is from March 14th, 1748. It's very difficult to read.
Faded and aged.
It's very faded, but it's so amazing that something could last that long from that far back. Something about bags. So your baggage sent our baggage to the Heights from Frederickstown. Oh, I can't touch it, sorry. It's hard not to touch it, isn't it? What's that say? We dined, well, it says we dined in town and then went to the Heights and lodged.
So these are your people. And this is a journal that a young man who was to play a monumental role in American history wrote when he was 16.
Do we know who it was?
Tim McGraw is on a search into his father's heritage. He is at the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C., where he has just found a journal from 1748 that connects his ancestors to one of the most important historical figures in American history.
That's pretty amazing. Do we know who it was?
You want to just read the spine of this?
Oh my gosh, it's George Washington. That's amazing. Wow. So George Washington, this journal was George Washington at 16 years old.
16 years
traveling
old.
through the Shenandoah Valley and writing notes about my ancestors.
That's right.
Wow. Probably my favorite person of history of all time is George Washington.
A model for a nation.
Absolutely.
But this trip changed his life. He'd had a rough time growing up. Didn't grow up in a wealthy family. He had great aspirations. He wanted to rise to the top of colonial Virginia society, but he didn't really have the means to do that. He lost his father when he was 11 years old.
Wow. Wow, that's pretty significant.
Yeah,
You know,
and when his father died, his hopes died of having an education.
So it's pretty amazing, you know, where he ended up. I mean, being a fatherless child. He lost his father at 11. I mean, I discovered my father at 11, and so he had to figure out a way to make it on his own. He had to figure out what he needed to do in order to do that.
Yeah.
So now that we know this, and we know that he stayed there. Do we know if he had any other contact with the Heights after this trip, or we know anything else about his relationship with the Heights?
You have another letter that you
I have something else that I can show you. This letter is a letter that was written on June 24th, 1767, by George Washington to his neighbor, John Posey.
Posey was something of a ne'er-do-well who had borrowed a significant sum from Washington to pay back his debts.
To Captain John Posey. So it's difficult for me to tell which was greatest, my surprise or concern at finding by your letter that you wanted to borrow a further sum of 500 pounds. See what fortunes were made by the Heights, the first takers up of those lands. So it was 20 years after his first contact with the Heights when he first came through at 16 years old to the Shenandoah Valley and met the Heights. And now 20 years later, he's using my ancestors as an example of the things that you should do.
That's right.
Wow, how about that? Come on, George. That's pretty amazing to me. I mean, just the connection of probably, arguably, one of the most famous figures in history. And here he is in his pages talking about my ancestry. You know, it's sort of a theme that we're starting to develop here with some of the things that happened with some of my ancestors of pushing forward and pushing the envelope. It's a true American story, an early American story.
It is an American story.
Absolutely.
Very much. So, have we answered all your questions?
What I really want to know now is I want to know where Yost came from.
Well, we have a document here.
Oh, wow. Now, what
This is a facsimile. Well, what's
I
it say
see
here?
New York. I see
New York?
New York, 4th of October, 1710.
And it's a list of people, among whom, particularly number 66.
Johann Yost. Now it's H-A-Y-D.
A little different spelling.
Right. I wonder, I mean, a lot of names were changed when they first came over, I guess. Now, what is this from?
This is, it's called the subsistence list. It's a list of people who were being provided support on immigration to North America by the British government.
So would all these people have come from Britain?
Well, that's for you to find out.
So I guess I'm off to New York to find
Yeah,
out
you
more
gotta go
about
to New
this.
York to find that out.
Well, can I take this list with me?
That's yours to take.
Fantastic. Well, I'm gonna go find out more
All
about
right.
Yost tonight. Thank you for everything. It's been a
It's
pleasure.
a pleasure. Safe journey.
All right, we'll see you.
Yost was clearly a power player in the 1730s, but I just found out that he was on a list to get support from the British government just 20 years earlier. If he was getting help, then I'm guessing he was a self-made man who started out with very little. I'm in New York looking for the last pieces to this puzzle. Where did Yost come from? And why was he on that subsistence list?